Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Beminidela Beatrice here again. And then in this video I will be explaining how I built a to-do list app from scratch using just HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Nothing else, no framework, no back end. Yes, so this is my to-do list. If I enter a task, it adds it to my list, and then I can mark it as complete and then also delete that task. Then my to-do list also can be filtered. My tasks can be filtered with dates. So we have the all dates, we have today, overdue, tasks that have passed away, and then tasks that are upcoming and are yet to meet the deadline. Yes. So this video is purposely to walk you through the structure of the project, of how I created this to-do list. Yes. So the logic and then the structure behind the project. Then and how tags are dynamically added. So like if I enter a tag and I click the add tags, how it's added, or how I get an error message when there's nothing inputted, and then how deadlines and then the filters also work. Yes, so these are the filters, the today, the overdue, and then the upcoming tags. And how I also used JavaScript. So in this to-do list app, I used local storage function in JavaScript to store whatever the user saves in his or her to-do list, so that in case the user logs out of the to-do list and then comes back later or refreshes the page later, whatever that he or she has saved in the to-do list will still remain intact. None will be deleted, nothing, like there will be no changes to it. How he or she left it, that's how he or she will find it there, just like that. When she logs out of the app and comes back again, or when she refreshes the app. Yeah. And then so this project is mainly focused on functionality and then reactiveness. Yes. So this project was actually to showcase my JavaScript skills. Yes, because I'm a total beginner in JavaScript. So I just did this small little app to showcase my JavaScript skills, and then I think I'm on track. Yes. So the project mainly focused on the functionality, clean UI design, practical use of JavaScript for real-world applications. Yes. So let's get started on the structure and then the logic behind this app, behind my personal to-do list app. Yes. So I will first of all like to start with the structure. And we all know that structure, okay, not all of us, but in website application or website programming, the structure of the website we normally see is as a source of the HTML. The HTML used in creating the website. So like without the HTML, there will be no text or something. Yes. So the HTML is the markup language for the structure. So with the HTML, we build the structure and we use the CSS to style the structure so that our structure looks appealing, or our website looks appealing. Without the CSS, it will just be raw text or raw buttons, raw list items, raw unordered items. So with the CSS, it helps us add colors, linear gradients, background colors, animations, transitions, and then the rest. And then the JavaScript also helps us make our web application reactive and functional. Yes, so in case I click on this add tags, it tells me to enter a tags. It alerts the user to enter a tags because there was no tags entered before the add tags button was clicked. Yeah. But in case I add anything and I press enter or I tap the add tags, it stores my tags or whatever I typed. Yes, so that's what CSS is about. JavaScript is about. So without the JavaScript, I can't get this function of adding tags, the filtering of tags using my deadlines. Yes. So let's dive into the HTML codes. Okay. So my project is named to-do list. Yes. So to-do list, and the HTML file is named index.html. So I open it and then go through the structure. Yes. So we start from here and all right. So this introduction. So in my to-do list app, you can see there's a welcome message as soon as you open the to-do list app. So this welcome message, this text you see here, is as a result of these codes you see here. So the H1 element and then the P tag, the P paragraph element was all placed in a div element. So this is my div element. This is my H1 element, which is the welcome to your to-do list app, to-do list. And then the P element, which has the smaller text, the highlighted ones here. Yes, so I actually kept the H1 element and then the P element in the div because I wanted to give like this whole text over here a unique styling. So with the div element, I could give like both of them the same styling. And so one of the styling I gave it, as you can see, is the background color. I give it a background color of somehow white, but no white, and then a pattern, the space you see at the top and the down, the left, and then this right. And then I also gave it a border radius. Yes, so I didn't let I made the border have a real edge. I didn't want it to have a sharp edge. Yes, I wanted it to look real. That's why I gave it a border radius. So this edge here are somehow shaped. Yes. So that is it for my introduction paragraph. And then after the introduction paragraph, I also created another div which was called the container. And this div, which is called the container, is yes. So this is my container from here to here. Yes. And these codes, the result of this highlighted codes is this. Is this. It's actually the container, the whitish container, a bit whitish container after the welcome paragraph or welcome message. Yes. So the result of this div code is is this. My to-do list, enter a task, and then the deadline, the add task button, the all, the today, the overdue, and then the upcoming. Yes. So in my div, I created a form so I could keep my input elements. And so the input elements, so these are my input elements, and the result of this input element is this, the enter tags, and then the date column you can see over there. Yes. And then also the button, after that I actually closed the form, because when I was coding, when I actually wanted this button, the add tags button, to be inside that of the form, not outside. That of inside the form. Control plus S. So I just try to put it inside the form. But when I was coding, when I place it inside the form, it gave me problems because of the JavaScript. When I tap the add tags, it doesn't respond. Yes, and I got to realize that it's because the add tags function was, per my debugging, per how I debugged my JavaScript code, it told me that it's because the add tags function wasn't in a global scope. So I did some little research, and I got to know that since this button was in the form element, it breaks the add tags function. So anytime I call the add tags function whilst the button is in the form element, it actually thinks that the button is a submit button, because normally buttons in forms are used for submission of your information or quiz or anything at all. Yes, so it's actually, JavaScript actually assumes that since the button is in a form element, then the button is used for submission, and then anytime I click the add tags, it just refreshes the page but doesn't add the inputted tags to my tags list. Yeah, so because of that, I had to remove it from the form elements and then put it outside that of the form element to actually resolve my issue. Yes. So after putting it out of the form element, when I tap on the add tags, I get an error message because I didn't input anything before clicking on the add tags button, and it will give me an error message that I should enter a tags, because you have to enter a tags before you can add a tags or anything to your tags list. Yes. Then I also moved on to the button. These blue buttons you see over here, the all, today, overdue, and upcoming button, is as a result of this div elements. Yes, these div elements I've highlighted here. These are the results of the div elements. Yes. So the div elements have 4 buttons, which one is for the all, one is for today, one is for overdue, and one is for upcoming. Yes. So on all the buttons, I give them an onClick function, which is a JavaScript onClick function, that anytime I click on or you should call the function filter tags with or as an argument. Yes. And then anytime I click today, you should call the function filter tags with today as an argument. Anytime I call overdue, you should call overdue function and with the overdue tags as an argument, and so on. Yes. So I actually placed these 4 buttons, all these 4 buttons in the div elements so I could style the container in which they are in, so it doesn't look awkward. So with this filter, with this div element, I could style the buttons so they look horizontal, so they look online, not column. Yeah, so they are all in row. So I got this particular style with them all in row using by giving the div element, by giving this div element a display of flex, and then a flex direction of row, and then a gap. You can see there are gaps between the elements. I gave it a gap, and then I also give it a margin of auto so that all the buttons, like the div element, will be in the middle of this particular container. Yes. So that's all for the buttons, for the filter buttons. And I also added the unordered list elements. Yes. And I gave it an ID of tax list because since it's an ordered list element, we all know an ordered list will surely contain list items. So in that list items will be my tax items. Yes. So in this HTML, there's no list items here. So I use JavaScript to ask the user for his or her tags. Then we append it to the UL here. Yes. So so after the user inputting his or her tags, that tags is actually stored in a variable, and that variable will be appended to the UL element as a list item element. Yes. Then, after this, my last feature of the to-do list was a transitioning of codes. Yes. So you can see I have some transitioning happening over here, and the transitioning is just using the transition and property in CSS, and then the displaying of the codes is as a result of JavaScript. Yes. So without the JavaScript, the codes will not be displaying in after some seconds or something, because the codes are many. So I actually store the codes in an array, then give it a time of, I think, 5 seconds for each transition to happen. So after 5 seconds, it changes, the code changes, and then when you also hover, you can see that without the hover button, there's an opacity on the codes, but with the hover, when you hover over the codes, you can see that the opacity is set to 1. Yes. Well, I also linked my CSS file using the link elements in the head tag. Yes. So then this is the link element, and then since I'm linking a CSS file which is a style sheet, this I give it a relative of style sheet. So the REL means relative. This REL is a short form of relative. So since it's a style sheet, I'm linking to this HTML element, I give it a relative of style sheet, and then a reference of styles.css, because that's the name of my CSS file. And since it's in the same directory or it's in the same folder, there was no need using slashes or dots or anything to access my style sheet, because I saved all of them in a particular folder for this to-do list app. Yes. And then I also linked my script file, which is the JavaScript file, using the script tag, and then giving it a source of script.js, because that's the name of my JavaScript file. So the source, the SRC you see here, is a short form of source, and then that source means the name of your JavaScript file. So in case my JavaScript file was to be in another folder, like a calculator folder or something, I would have to use some slashes to move to that particular folder. Yes. So I'll have to use some slashes to move to my folder. So let's say blackjack folder, then I'll select the file I need in that blackjack folder. So I want index.js, which is the JavaScript file. Yes. But since my JavaScript file is in the same directory with the HTML file, there was no need of using slashes. Yes. So all I needed was to type or input the name of my JavaScript file. Yeah, and poof, we move on. Right. So we are done with the structure of this to-do list app. Now we move to the logic. Yes, the logic, which is the meaning the meaning behind each behavior, the meaning behind the add tags, the meaning behind the meaning behind today, the meaning behind property. Yes. And those meaning, all this came into existence with using JavaScript. And so I would like to walk you through how I got the logic behind the to-do list app. So let's dive into the JavaScript file. Yes, which is named this. So my JavaScript file let's start from the very beginning. Right, on JavaScript file is somehow lengthy, but I'll wrap up right now. Okay, it's just the logic. So alright, so in my HTML file I had an element. Okay, in my HTML file I had an element named the tags list, if you would all remember. So the tags list was the unordered list element. Yeah, the tags list ID was given to the unordered list element. Yes, so in this JavaScript file I actually gave that that's what we call the DOM, which is the documents object manipulation. Yes, so I actually accessed that unordered list using the DOM and then saving it to a variable named the tags list. Yes, so this is the variable they highlighted, which is the tags list, and then I use the DOM to access that particular tags list unordered element. So I accessed it using the get element by id function. So document.getElement by id function. Yes, so that's how come I accessed my tags list element for any input, for any editing. Yes, because I'll actually need it in my JavaScript file. And then so after that, okay, I want to go logically according to how my to-do list looks like, but when I was coding I just mixed up stuffs. So let's move to the create tags function. So the create tags function, so this is my create tags function, sorry, the add tags function. So if you could remember, or in my HTML form I had a button called add tags. Yes, this button called add tags, and then on that in that add tags button element I had an onClick function. Yes, that anytime you click on the button called add tags, a function called add tags should be called. So anytime that function called add tags is called, it means everything in that function will be executed as soon as you click on the add tags button. Yes, so I would like to walk you through the add tags function. So the add tags function is actually starts with getting text, the text, and then you remove extra spaces, like maybe the user entered online front end, but uses so many spaces, development. Yes, so actually this thing you can, oh really, so when I don't know if you were following, but when I was typing, I typed learn front end, then after the front end I inputted so many spaces that it gave me a lengthy like word or a lengthy text. But due to this let tags test be equal to the tags input dot value dot stream, so that this stream function trims the input that the user has entered, so that it removes any extra spaces, because the only space we need is one space between each word. Yes, we don't need two spaces wouldn't do us any good, so we need one space in between each word. Yes, so that's actually the function of this stream function you see over here. That's the purpose of this stream function you see over here. And then this dot value, so in this JS file I have a variable called tags input, and that variable is actually to take the input from users. So with that tags input dot value, so this dot value alerts the browser, alerts JavaScript to alert the browser that this tags input dot value means that we are supposed to take an input from the user. Yes, so it means this input we are going to use, which will be called tags input, is not hard coded by the developer, which is me, since I developed this. It's not hard coded by me, or it's not hard coded by the person that developed the particular app you are using. So this dot value is trying to tell JavaScript that you are supposed to take input from the user. So the dot value takes input from the user. Yes. And then so after the tags test stores the input the user entered, the input is being checked if it's empty or not. So if the input is empty, then JavaScript will alert the user to enter a tag. So without you entering anything, you can never add a tag. Yes, so this is the alert function with an argument of please enter a tag. So the alert function is actually the window that will alert you. Yes, so in case I don't type anything, then I press enter, I get this window alert that I should enter a tag. Yes, so that's it. Then we also create the tags object. Alright, so I would like to explain the tags object. So in the list item or our tags item stores 3 elements, which is the tags test, and then the completed state, and then the deadline, which is your date. Yes, so the tags test is what the user enters, the tags that the user enters, and then the completed state is when you want to hover or when you want to mark a tag as completed. Yes, and then the deadline element is actually to store the date your tags will be due. Yes, so I actually store them in an array, since we know that arrays are actually good for storing, or I store them in an object, since we know that objects is good for storing multiple variables, unlike just primitive variables that you are only limited to store one. So I use objects since I'm storing 3 variables in a particular structure, which is called the object in my case. So anytime I input a task, I input a deadline, that deadline or the task will be pushed. So the push function is used to stack things into an object. So it's like I already have a container of foodstuffs. Yes. So in case I've already stored containers in that I've already stored foodstuffs in that container. Anytime I get new goods of foodstuffs or new food commodities, I have to push or rearrange them so that the new goods will also have a space to be kept, so that they can be kept. Yes, so that is actually the purpose of the push function. So the push function will push the task object, which is what we entered, the 3 details we entered, into a task object, into our array for the object. Yes. So after adding, so if I add 5, it will like make way, or it will provide space for me so that I can add 5. If I add 10, to make space for me so that I can add 10. So after adding that 10, or after adding any number of tags that I want, I'll call the saved tags function, and that is also a function I created. So the save tags function is actually to save whatever tag that the user inputted. And then the display tags function is used to display the tags that the user inputted. So yes, so it's like without the display tags function, you wouldn't have seen whatever you typed here, whatever you typed in the container. Yes, it will maybe have vanished or something like that. Yes. And then after inputting, I don't know if you realize, after inputting a task, the input element is set to an empty string again. So let's say I input exercise. After I enter, or after I click the add tags, it's being set to an empty string again. Yes, because I didn't want, after inputting the exercise and you add it to your task list, the exercise will still be there, and then if you want to input another task, you probably have to delete before inputting another task. That actually reduces user experience, which is the UX, and it's actually a bad habit, because if someone goes through all this process, all this stress, just to add tags to his or her list, I'm not sure the person would have visit your app again. Yes, so it's actually, I'll have to set all of them to an empty string after each tag has been added to my list. So in case I even choose edit, then I listen a task code, realize that after I add them to the list, after I add it to the list, the input element, the input tab, and then the date tab is actually set to empty. Yeah. Well, then alright, so I'm done with the add tags function. Why? So now I'll move to the filtering function. So with the filtering, yeah, so with the filter tags function, it's actually a function that will So it actually uses your deadline and then today's date. So it compares your deadline and today's date and then gives filter tags according to the button you choose. So in case I choose all, since I don't really have a criteria, since I choose the all button, I don't have a criteria for filtering my tags. It displays all the tags I have inputted so far. But when I tap on the today button, it compares today's date to my deadline. Yes, then it gives me all the tags I have to finish today, which are today, which is the deadline. Yes, so in case I inputted the tags that maybe I should have learned today and the deadline was today, when I tap on today, I'll have my tags there. And also, if you tap on the overdue button is tags that have already, like tasks that have been due, like the deadline has been due. Maybe you couldn't meet the deadline or you were not able to complete it. Yes. So in case I have incomplete tags which its deadline has been due, I will get those tags when I tap on the overdue tab. And then the upcoming button is actually used to give to actually compare the today's date and then your deadline. So when it realizes that your deadline is yet to come or it has not yet approached or is not due, it will save those upcoming tags in there. Yeah, anytime you click on the upcoming button, it just gives you your upcoming tags. Yes. Then right, so I want to walk you through how I created the create tags function. So the create tags function, yeah, so here it is, or the create tags function is actually linear. So anytime the create tags function is called, it actually creates a list item using the DOM. So this is it. So DOM document.create element. So since I'm creating a list item element, I input the li there. So list item document. So it always creates a list item and then stores it in the li element. And then I actually added a class to the list item so that I could style my list item. So I gave it a class of tags item. So the list item dot class list dot add tag into bracket tags item actually creates creates a class name for the list item. Then I also created a span. Yes, so the span will be stored in the list item. So like this code here is a span element. This date here is also a span element, but this mark complete button and then delete button are all buttons. Yes, so I all created them using HTML. Yes, so Yes, so I created the complete button using the DOM. Yes, so this is it. Let's complete button. So I created it, document.createElement button. So after creating it, I stored it in a variable called complete btn. Yes, and I give it a test concept of mark as complete. So that's what you can see over here. So the mark complete is what you can see, the test you can see in the button. Yes, and I also give it a class of complete button so that I could style. I could give it a color test and a background test, a padding and a margin and whatsoever. And then same applies to the delete tags, the delete button tag. The delete tags button, yes. So I also created it using the DOM. So document.createElement, which is an element to be button. Then I stored it in a delete btn variable. Yes, I gave it a test concept of delete tags. Then I gave it a class of delete button. Well, yes, so I actually have a style for each of them. So you can, if you look closely, anytime I click on the mark complete, you see that there's an animation taking place. Alright, so anytime I click mark complete, there's pan element. This pan element is being strike through, and then an animation is being taken place. We have a background color of lemon green or something like that. So when I tap on complete, you see a background color of lemon green. Yeah, so that is an effect of animations I gave to the completed button. So like anytime I did that in my JavaScript file. So it means anytime I tap on the, yes, so that was, so this course you see over here is as a result of this complete. And yes, so the logic behind it is that anytime I click on the complete button, and then it has the complete button includes a test content of mark as complete, then that test content should be changed to completed. And then that when the test content is changed to completed, a class should be added and to the button, and that class a class should be added to the span, not the button, which is the code over, which is the tax test over here. So in that class, that's, so yes, so this is the, so a class named completed should be added to the span. So in my completed class, I give it a style of test decoration as line through, and then I give it an animation so that anytime the class is toggled from the normal class to the completed class, it has an animation, it has a line through effect. Yes, and then so it was an if else statement I used to create this completed effect you can see. So if the complete button is clicked, if the complete button is clicked and the button contains a test of mark as complete, then the button should now change test and then contain completed, and then have a class of, and then a class of completed, a class named completed should be added to the span element. Yes, which is the tax test over here. And then, but if I click on the mark as complete button, and then the test content is mark as complete, you should remove the completed class from the span element, which would remove the style, the line through effect, and then the animation effect. Yes, so it's like when I have mark complete, you should give me this animation and the line through, but when I have completed, then you should remove that animation and then the line through. Yes, that is actually what it means. And then the delete function too is used to remove a tag. So anytime I tap on the delete, it should delete that particular task. Anytime I tap on delete, you see the exercise vanish. Anytime I tap on delete, you see it vanishes. Yes, so that's actually the use of the delete tag. So there is a function in JavaScript called the remove. Yes, so you just use the remove function on the particular element you want to remove from an element or in a document. Yes, so that's basically what I use for the delete button. And then yes, so I want to walk you through how I added the various type of elements to my list item, which is the tags item, because as I said earlier, the list item contains different types of elements. So with the help of JavaScript, I could append my span element to the list item element. So the span element is actually the tags text. So code, then let's say 20 and add tags. So yes, so this is my span. The date is also a span, and then the mark complete in this one is a button. So anytime I create a tags, anytime I call the tags function, it's telling JavaScript on the browser that you should add the span element to the list item element, and then add the deadline element. Yes, the date also to the list item, add the complete button also to the list item, and then add the delete button also to the list item. Yeah, so anytime I create a task, you add span to list item, you add deadline to list item, you add complete button to list item, and delete button to list item. Yes, so after all this is done, after all this is added to the list item, the list item is also supposed to be added to the unordered list. So the unordered list is, in my HTML I give my unordered list an ID of tags list. Yes, so this is the name of the ID name of my unordered list elements. So it's tags list. So I just appended the list item to my tags list, which is the unordered element. Yes, so that is the effect of whatever you see. In case I input any tags, you see that it's always appends to the UL. It always appends to the list. And anytime I'll tap a task, it always appends to the list item. Yes. Yes. So this is as a result of that. Alright. So I think that is all. Yes, so let me walk you through the last 10, which is the transitions. Yes, so with the transitions, I actually stored my transition and my quote in an array. Yes, since I have duplicates on many quotes, I couldn't use one like different types of variables, so I just had to store them in an array to make things simple. So I store them in an array, so anytime my code text is actually the p element. So in my HTML file, I have a p element with um an ID called code test. Yes, so this is the code test. Yes, and I also stored all I also gave the test a box. Yes, so a container. So that container, I gave the container an ID of code box. Yes, I gave the I and it's an ID of code box, and I actually saved all of them. So I saved the code test in a constant variable called in a constant structure called the code test, and then the code box in a constant structure called the code box. So with this, I could access the I could access any code at all I want and then display them. Yes. So anytime the code index is 0, so in JavaScript, the index of um variables and arrays start from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3 going. So the logic behind this is that anytime code index